Hello, welcome to Podsongs, where we interview inspirational people as inspiration for a new song. Today, my guest is the musician Leo Sidran, and his guest is Alan Lightman. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. What a setup.
You caught me mid-apple.
Oh, okay. Oh, I hate it when that happens.
I'm a minute early.
Oh,
I
good.
signed on, but I knew that you would be here. And even though I knew it, I still chose to eat this apple.
Even a podcast veteran like yourself.
Makes makes fruit-related choices.
Okay, well, are you ready for this?
I really don't know. I'm actually chewing. I apologize. Hold on. This one is so different for me because, and I think it's good. I mean, in all fronts, not just the musical aspect of this project, but
Mm.
the podcast aspect, because I'm so in control of my projects. I'm a,
And
um,
you do a wonderful job.
thank you. I appreciate it. But I'm aware of it. I mean, I'm aware that my MO is to kind of just make sure that my thumbprint is everywhere.
Mm, mm.
And so, after 200, nearly 250 podcast episodes, I have a kind of a sense of, well, this is what I do and this is how I approach it. And, I don't think I've written out questions or even bullet points for an interview in over 5 years. I just go in and try to
Yeah.
lock in with the person I'm gonna talk
Mhm,
to,
mhm.
and but I read your little sheet that you send out about process, and I said, "Well, in the interest of following this thread,
Ah,
I wrote some questions out." I don't know if I'm
okay.
gonna use them, but, I'm here for the experience.
Yeah, well, congratulations on your podcast. It's the third story, and yes, 234th episode I listened to today. And yeah, it's so well put together. You put a lot more effort in than I do. You write a whole introduction and you edit it together with all the nice background music to give the guests a wonderful intro. I'm not going to do that for you, I'm afraid. I just
I
because
think a
we
lot of your production happens in other places,
it's
you've already for one.
the back
Yeah,
end. Yeah, we put all the work into the end of the show to make a song.
that's right.
So yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
different.
yeah. I mean, and the interesting thing about it is, to me, making the podcast has been a lot like finding my way
Mhm.
creatively. Um, it changes over time. I mean, when I started my
Right.
podcast, I insisted that everybody come to my house in Brooklyn. You had to come here. If you weren't willing to come here, then we weren't gonna talk.
Ah.
And then, of course, COVID sort of upended that, and it was great that it did.
Mm, mm. Yeah, so now you can reach out further afield. Yeah, you've had so many fantastic guests on there. I was listening to one with this trumpet player who was an amazing, amazing guy.
Ibrahim Malouf, the most recent one, yeah,
Yeah,
brilliant
exactly.
guy,
Yeah,
brilliant
yeah,
guy.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And if I had imagine if I had insisted that this guy come to my house. I mean, I would be waiting, years and years.
yeah, yeah. I think you have to be Joe Rogan for that, and
And then they fly to Texas just to meet you.
he pays for the flights as well.
Oh, does he pay for, well,
Mm.
he can afford it.
With that much money, I feel bad if he didn't pay for my flight.
I know it, right? Well, Joe Rogan can afford to fly people here. I've paid for the odd Uber now
Oh,
and then
really? Okay.
for somebody to come to the house. But yeah, Zoom opened up the world. It
Mm,
turned out that by
mm,
going into my house, retreating inward, I actually opened up to the world.
mm. But you're back into the world now. You've just got back from Spain.
I am back in the world. Yeah. I just got back from France and Spain, um, and I was in Belgium for a few days and in the UK for a couple of days too.
I saw all those videos of that funky French band. They look like you had a great time on the road.
I love those guys. My groovy French band, I met them when they were just finishing college. They're kind of like, I don't know, 22, 23. And I have to say that, I live in New York and I have access to and the opportunity to play with some of the greatest musicians in the world. I
Mm,
mean,
mm.
New York is one of those rare places where, like LA or Nashville or London, where you can call your heroes and they might play a local bar gig with you,
Really? Yeah.
it's I've seen it, and I've done it. Um,
Mm,
and that's incredible.
mm.
But one of the challenges that I found in New York in putting my bands together is that everyone is so busy and so accomplished, on their own, that
Okay.
it's hard to convince a group of musicians to rehearse regularly, to
Ah,
really integrate the material, to become a team,
mm.
And these French guys from day one were totally on board. They were committed. They wanted
Okay.
to be part of a group. They wanted this to be a group.
Hmm.
So I go over a couple times a year and work with them, and I really have learned a lot.
Yeah, I saw you had them in the drill. You were drilling them in the practice room, and
We were drilling. I think there's a video that you saw where there was a light that was flashing,
hmm
and
hmm
we figured out that it was flashing at about 120 beats per minute. So everything we rehearsed ended up sounding like it was kind of disco tempo because that's what the light we were trying to just synchronize with the flashing light.
Oh, but New York, I mean, you look like you're having so much fun there. You play in your dad's band, yeah?
I
Drums.
do. Yeah, my dad is a piano player and a singer, and my first instrument was the drum. So I started out playing drums with him, and
Mm,
you know, um, when I graduated from college, I
mm,
started, which was in the late '90s, early 2000s. I started touring with him, and I remember thinking, I hadn't really been asserting myself creatively. I didn't wasn't sure who I was independent of him for a while.
yeah, yeah,
I always wrote songs and I always sort of did my thing, but it was confusing for me for a while.
right.
And I remember at some point in my mid 20s thinking to myself, well, I'll tell you, I hope I'm not going to be in my 50s and touring with my dad, And
And you are.
well, I'm in my mid late 40s and my dad
Mm,
is turning 80 and I feel
mm,
like it's such a gift that we get to do this now. I mean, my whole mindset has changed around it.
right. Yeah, yeah.
So, like it's such a privilege to have a relationship like that across generations.
Yeah, and you've had him on your podcast 4 times, and now you value it. Yeah, these you wanna preserve those memories. I'm kind of in that same stage, and yeah, yeah, you're very lucky.
Well, thank you. I agree. And I mean, I know, I think when you become a parent, when you're, that's when a huge sense of my identity shifted.
Yeah,
I realized that it was part of a longer continuum. It wasn't
right.
just me, what I want, and it became so clear to me what a gift it was. And I don't know I have an 11-year-old daughter. I don't know what the future of my relationship will be like with her,
Mhm.
but
Does
I
she play
certainly
the
know
drums?
she does not play the drums. She,
This could be a big flaw in the plan of
well,
hereditary.
I always, I have no siblings, and I always told my dad if he had a second, he could have a bass player too, and then he would have the full
Well,
rhythm
he
section.
got you, you do everything.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair, but not all at once.
I've seen photos of you doing it all at once.
Yeah, the magic. That's the
Yeah.
magic of modern technology. So,
Because you have such a great so go ahead.
no, I just wanted to ask, am I catching you in Italy? Are you still in Italy right now?
I am still in Italy, yeah, I've been here 10 years now, and I've got a little baby, 5-month-old now, so I'm in
I
your
saw.
phase
Yeah,
of rediscovering life and my relationship to my father as well, and, completing the cycle. Yeah,
that's right.
it's
It's
crazy, yeah, and I'm a bit tired, but, as you can see
yeah,
these bags under the eyes, but actually coming to do a podcast is like a real break, because I give a real excuse not to be holding the baby. He's going through a real fussy period at the moment.
how do you deal with that? I mean, I was just walking the dog. I realized I had promised my wife that I would walk the dog before we did this, and so
Mm, mm.
doing this
But yeah,
interview.
but you walk the dog, I have to carry him, so
Yeah, no, I know, I understand
yeah,
that.
it's a lot
You're in
heavy.
very different. My
It's a
daughter's like
lot mine's a
4.
lot harder.
It is harder. It is harder. But, I mean, yours is harder, although I remember when I started practicing yoga and looking into Buddhist philosophy a little bit, and I learned that the fundamental principle of Buddhism is that life is suffering. And I took major issue with that because I
Yeah,
felt
I
like,
disagree with that a lot, yeah.
yeah,
But anyway.
I don't suffer. Life is not suffering. But then I realized that I realized, and also through a bunch of these interviews that I've done, like I interviewed the actor Peter Coyote a couple of times. He's also a Zen Buddhist priest, and he said to me,
Mm.
"It's not suffering. It's been mistranslated. What it is affliction. Life is
Uh,
affliction." That's how it
Right.
translates. And I thought, well, okay, yeah, life is affliction. I had to walk the dog, and I was stressing out before and that's affliction. I mean, it seems
Mm-hmm.
like a ridiculously minute affliction, but it is a kind of affliction. You holding your baby
Mm.
incessantly is affliction, even though it's like a form of, it's like the most joyous thing you could possibly do. It's also like, oh my God, when can I put this baby down so I can like do
Yeah, yeah.
my
I mean, we
dog?
spent years trying to make the thing. Now he's here. We're arguing about who's going to hold him. So it's anyway. I think definitely a Zen teacher. That's what I've
Yeah.
heard it called. A baby is that you have to be in the moment and you have to keep your shit together because he will run the show,
Well,
and it's
that's
proving
what I
to.
was going to ask you. So, here you are, you know that there's chaos on the other side of the door, and you
Mm.
have, this conversation right now that we're having
Oh,
is the fruit,
it's great.
but it's
Oh
so
yeah.
much work that you've put in to make this happen, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like, oh, I really need to show up? Like I really have to extra show up right now,
N-
considering how much I've worked to put this together.
no, because now you do the interview.
All right.
Yeah.
That explains why that's how I'm feeling.
Yeah. Because I mean, if we could talk about your guest for a minute, Alan Lightman is a heavyweight. Yeah.
It certainly is.
I wouldn't want to do this interview. It's a lot. You got a lot of. You got to really show up, because I mean, he's done. Maybe you could. What? Why did you pick him first? That's probably a good question. If
Oh, I mean, I will say, as heavy as I knew he was, as much of a heavyweight as I knew he was, I
mm.
actually did not know the half of it when I put his
So
name
you've been
on the list.
researching. Yeah,
A
yeah.
bit, yeah. I mean, I read a couple of his books when I was in college. I read a book
Okay,
called Einstein's Dreams. That was the first thing I read of
right.
his.
That's the most famous one. Yeah.
That's the most famous one. And that is a book that Alan Lightman is a physicist, and he's also a writer. He lives in between the space of science and the arts.
At
And
Harvard, didn't he hold dual
he did at
department
MIT.
heads?
Yeah, at MIT.
MIT. Wow,
And that's an unusual
that's pretty
thing.
unusual. Yeah, to
Yeah.
be the head of. Yeah,
Of these two disciplines, and to really
left in the
thrive
right brain. No. Yeah.
left in the right brain. This book, Einstein's Dreams, first of all, I mean, I didn't remember it specifically. I remembered the feeling of it. I mean, it's almost 30 years. It's crazy to even be alive long enough that I could say I read a book 30 years ago and I still remember what it felt like to read it. But
Mm,
really, I put Alan Lightman's name on the list of, like I would like to talk to Alan Lightman because I I remembered that feeling. And part of what I remembered about it was an understanding that we as creative people take our sources from all over. And in
okay.
fact, the more I've been thinking about preparing for this interview for Podsongs, for your project, I realized that it's kind of the ultimate conversation to have, because we're talking about somebody who's studied deeply the world of physics and let it inform his poetic heart. You know what I mean? So, like,
Mm,
Einstein's Dreams is a book that imagines what were the dreams that Albert Einstein was having in the spring of 1905 when he was formulating the theory of relativity. So it's not really a science text. It's kind of like a fugue. It's kind of
mm,
this dream state of what might have been going on in the background, in the unconscious of a great scientific mind that would help him to formulate his theory of relativity.
okay.
That conceit is so brilliant
Mm,
that
mm,
I wanted to talk to Alan. I just wanted to talk to the person that wrote that.
wow.
Um, and I did remember that I read another one of his books after that called Dance for Two, which
Hmm.
was a collection of essays that he wrote that primarily explored how science shows up in our lives in all kinds of places. Like, there's one essay that I did remember reading all those years ago, and I went and reread it before this interview, about a ballet dancer and all of the forces that are taking place on the stage, in her body, in the air, how physics is contributing to movement, to dance, like what's happening, how does
Uh,
the body move through space. So, but then beyond that, I mean, Alan Lightman is highly accomplished. He's written I feel almost embarrassed to read his biography to you because it's like too long. I'll just sound
Yeah,
like I'm
don't
reading.
worry if it's in the if it's in the show notes and
Yeah. But he's written a number of novels. He's written a memoir. He's written essays. He's written scientific books. He did scientific work. He's really kind of a Renaissance person, I think.
yeah. But did he go through? Because I saw a YouTube video of him debating Richard Hawkins. Has he
Yeah,
gone through? And then he wrote that book under watching the stars in Maine, on an
yeah,
island in Maine.
yeah.
Has he gone through some sort of spiritual experience or an awakening?
Let's find out. I am really
Okay.
curious. I'm
Yeah.
really curious to know about that. I read an interview with him from, I don't know when that debate was that you saw. Read an interview with him in The Atlantic that was from 10 years ago,
Okay. This was
in
4
which
years ago.
this is 4 years ago. So maybe he has. At the time, he referred to himself as a, what did he call himself? A spiritual atheist.
Okay.
So let's see where he is today with it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I did see that he's just about to launch this new mini series on
I
PBS, a
saw that. Yeah.
television program, and it seems like he really is interested in trying to answer these big spiritual questions through the lens of science. So
So he's interviewing the Dalai Lama. I saw in the trailer.
I saw that too.
So I'm 4 degrees. I'm interviewing you. You interview Alan. Alan interviews the Dalai Lama. So I'm 4 degrees. Is it 3 degrees from the Dalai Lama?
You know, I
Little
am
old me.
I'm
You
not
know.
enlightened at all. Uh, I mean, that's a ridiculous thing to say, but I have interviewed some other people who spoke to the Dalai Lama also.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they, and it is kind of incredible to think that we're always
Yeah. Yeah.
a few degrees away from
Exactly.
anyone. That being said, when I married my wife, I promised her that I would introduce her to Madonna one day, and
Oh, did you?
she loves Madonna, and we actually got together playing in a Madonna cover band years ago.
Oh,
She was one of 4 people portraying the role of Madonna, and I was in the band. And I was absolutely confident that I could get her in a room with Madonna at some point. I used it as a kind of a, you know, I don't know, I tried to attract her with it. I said, "Hey, you stick with me. I'll get you to meet Madonna one day." And I can't do it. I can't get it done.
but you won an Oscar.
Yeah, but I still what do I do?
You
I
won,
call I write to Madonna's team and show a picture of the Oscar.
but do
And
you didn't go and get it in person, and she was there.
no, as a matter of fact, to be clear, I am the producer of an Oscar-winning song. So I
Ah.
technically did not win the Oscar because the recording doesn't win, the composition wins.
Oh. Okay.
So I did not collect it. My friend Jorge Drexler
Okay.
collected the Oscar
Oh.
because he wrote it. But we were there. We were at the parties and we were hanging out
Yeah. You're still a degree away.
yeah.
What one?
Yeah, and then I had a magical night, the night of the Oscars in 2005 when the night that it won, and we went to all these parties in LA. It was like being Cinderella. We went to these
Yeah.
parties. We walked into a party. We had the Oscar with us in our little entourage. I had produced the song. And we walk up to this door and out comes Rick Rubin and Lars
Mm.
Ulrich, the drummer from Metallica, and I walked up to them and I said to Rick, I just produced this song that won an Oscar and basically, it was like, "Can I stand with you for a minute?"
I think I'd ask him for a job.
No, I wanted to talk to him about his relationship with Johnny Cash. That's what we talked about briefly.
Oh wow. What a golden ticket. You're like Willy Wonka
That's what it was. It was
with
the
it.
gold ticket.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean I could interview you basically for. I mean, I was checking out all you. So you do so many big name advertising commercials. Well, you do Coca-Cola, American Express, and uh, FIFA. You've done so much work, and you do this podcast as well. You're as productive as Dr. Lightman, though.
Oh, it's not true. Well, I don't know. We'll find out how productive he is. I mean, it's just survival. I realize that to make a living, like a proper living
Mhm.
in the arts, in
Yeah,
music,
because you grew up in it, the family. You must have seen that. Jobbing musicians, it's tough. No.
and it's a job, you
Yeah.
know. I think that I still deal with that balance between art and commerce all the time. It's a big part of what I'm talking to people about
Mm,
in the
mm.
podcast. Sometimes I think I interview people in my podcast because I want them to tell me it's okay. I want to hear them
Right, right.
tell me how they deal with it. Um, but it's a job, and,
Mm,
and it's also an enormous privilege. I mean, sometimes I think support myself and a family by making noise, by making sound, by
mm,
manipulating sound. This is, other people have proper jobs. My job is to invent things and make people hopefully feel something through what I make. And
mm.
it's pretty incredible. But so what that means is that over the course of a lifetime, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of really interesting projects and clients and I don't even know how to find work, frankly. I just kind of like keep
Yeah.
things and wait for somebody to call.
So how does it work with those TV commercials? Do they give you a storyboard or they show you the finished thing and you have to I mean, that's a tough that's like a mini film score, no?
It's a mini film score. It's a little bit of the it wishes it were filmmaking a little more than it is. I mean, I think the thing about film, um, as opposed to doing commercials is that film is the auteur's medium. There's generally
Okay.
a smaller group of people who are making the creative decisions, and in advertising, it's much more committee oriented. You have
Uh,
layers of hierarchy that you
shit.
have. Yeah, so that's why it's really not so much fun.
Mm,
It's very political, and it's a kind of a it's like a it's an act of creative survival in a lot of ways to
uh,
just make it through and get the thing on the air. Like a lot of the work that you see that I've done is not my best work. It's the work that made it through all of the stages of
ah,
approvals and revisions and so often by the time the thing is finished, it's been so dismantled, put back together that I
mm,
almost don't recognize it anymore. So it's a little rough, which is why I started doing the podcast and really focusing on my own creative work also because I thought I can't I'm not gonna feel good about myself ultimately.
mm,
It's
mm,
gonna be
mm.
harder and harder for me to be motivated to do this work
Yeah.
if I don't have a creative outlet also that's I feel more ownership of.
Yeah, I got a job out of university as a copywriter. I was working as a songwriter, so, I was writing songs and they said, "Oh, well, you write songs, you can do copy." I mean, it's so I moved to the Netherlands and I got a job there and,
I saw where were you? Who'd you work for?
I just worked for a small ad agency
Right.
in Eindhoven in the south of the Netherlands,
Yeah.
I was 21 or something, really young, and, to move to the Netherlands was fantastic, but then to work in copywriting is I learned a lot of you do get a lot from it. It's a discipline about how to communicate, have a concept, and I think it's helped me with Podsongs because, you have to how to frame things to communicate,
Yes.
and that's informed maybe my lyric writing, to make songs very I mean, you had a song also about the head and the
The
brain and the
body and the
body.
brain, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Body and the brain, yeah.
So, which could also tie in with something not like that. But yeah, so these sort of lyrically informed has to be about a subject, and maybe I got that from, instead of just writing love songs forever, as many of my peers seem to do.
I really made an effort at a certain point in my songwriting to stop writing love songs.
Mhm,
Um, it doesn't or at least in the traditional sense, in the framework that I had been, uh,
mhm.
writing them before, they still managed to slip out, but
Yeah.
I mean, how can you avoid it? But I really I think, you know, the world is filled with love songs, great love
Mm,
songs,
mm. Yeah,
but
yeah. No, I'm not knocking it,
yeah,
but once you've done 400,
what else
mm,
can we talk about?
yeah, yeah,
And it
yeah.
turns out it's actually quite difficult to figure out what to talk about if you're not gonna talk about love.
Right, that's why I have Podsongs. Yeah.
Right. Check it out. That's interesting. Well, I thought about that as I was approaching this also. Like I tend to go, like I was saying, in my own interviews, I go with no agenda
Okay.
because I don't want to inhibit what might happen.
Right.
And so as I prepared for this interview, I went in with sort of no agenda, just like I want to speak with Dr. Lightman
Mm, mm.
and what his answers uh allow his answers to guide the conversation. But then
Yeah, yeah.
But then I wrote to you the other day and I said, well, I forgot what we're doing. Actually, I forgot that this is framed around both
Mm,
a larger question of, well, first of all, is this in the service of a larger cause? And also, what do I need to ask about in order to write a song?
yeah. Well, I found that the people who do as many interviews as him, they kind of they we're not going to get anything much new today unless you go down a really strange alleyway. So
Mm,
it's good just to let it flow. And in terms of a cause, it could just be about the human cause. About what it is to be human, or
yeah.
is there a God, or something big will come out of it. It could be the biggest question. So
Mm,
it doesn't have to be about. We don't never go into the interview with this song is about this, but just it'll be what it has to be a summary of the conversation. So whatever we talk about,
yeah.
that's it. Even because they've done a lot of instrumental songs as well, some instrumental artists, and
Interesting.
so yeah, maybe there's no lyrics in the end. Maybe it's just going to be a mood piece.
Could just be done using overtones and harmony
Yeah,
spheres.
yeah. The sound of running water.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
No, we have to earn our keep here. I mean, he's expecting a song. That's why we got the interview. It's a little carrot. I don't think anyone's ever offered to us. I'll write a song about him. So.
It is a good kind of
Yeah,
tactic.
you like it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because through my work as a commercial composer,
Mm,
I have had to write many songs where I'm given a
to order.
prompt, and
Yeah. Mhm.
to order exactly to order, and you realize that it is a craft. You know,
Yeah.
um, on the other hand, when it comes to my own songs, I often try to let the process remain a little mysterious, and
Yeah, yeah.
hope that you know the muse will visit you as we still. I think we want to believe.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I believe we're in a sea of mind. I'm actually a member of a spiritual organization called the Etheria Society, which is billed as the religion of the future. And so we believe that you evolve into greater and greater life forms on other planets and other classrooms at different frequencies of vibration. And eventually, life forms merge to form planets and suns, solar systems, and you evolve into greater and greater entities, which is pretty
Right.
big. Yeah. I hadn't heard of that before I heard of this
When did you
organization.
when did you discover this organization?
It was about 3 years ago. I was in India and, had a kind of an awakening like Dr. Lightman, not boat, but, yeah, I just started waking up every day at 3:33 and having all these, synchronicities. Um, and then I was directed to this organization via Kundalini. I was learning about yoga. And so, yeah, it was pretty crazy at the time. But now it's really it's scientific religion. It takes a long time to talk about it, but check it out. Ethereus.org is the website.
Right. All right. I like your planet poster behind your
Yeah,
head.
this is all from the Ethereus Society. This is the Mother Earth, a living being. Dr. King. Yeah, Dr. King up there. The Logos of Earth. It's big stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And were you married when you went through this transition?
Yeah, yeah, I was with my partner. We're still not married. We're still,
Were you sorry? Were you with your partner? Yes. Forgive
yes, we
me.
were.
That's
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
a traditional way of framing that question. Were you with the same partner that you have
Yes,
today?
yes. She's still with me. Yeah. She stuck through it.
What that's what I was going to ask you. What I mean, what is that conversation like?
Yeah, I mean, she went through it. She thought it was pretty weird, but I think a lot of these people who also joined the societies, you go through, because I was into Ayurveda first and then Buddhism
Yeah.
and then, Vipassana. So I come through. So once you do those things, people label you as a searcher. And then, so when you finally find the gold, people say, well, he's just a searcher. So you're kind of labeled with that. So they think this is also a phase.
But how do you know that it's not? I mean, did you think that all of the other phases along the way, on the way to this, were phases when you were in them, or did you see them as the thing?
No, I didn't really see them as a thing. That's why I kept searching. Yeah. So I used to
Right.
discern and that. You're such a professional here. Now you're interviewing me. You're supposed to be preparing for Dr. Lightman. You're just pulling these stories out of me with just your natural charm and your tried and tested interview technique
I will
conversation.
I will tell you that I have discovered through experience that I much prefer to be the one asking the questions.
Well, you can in about 2 minutes you can slip into your other
Yeah.
mode.
Yeah.
But what comes next for you? Are you going to do films after this? What's the next phase in your evolution?
I've just finished my next solo record. It's called What's Trending. It's going to come out in
Oh, okay.
23. Um, I put out a couple singles from it already. I put out one single called There Was a Fire. Um, and I'm really excited about it. It's funny. It was an accidental record. It was
I like
song.
Dr. Lightman's book, The Accidental Universe.
Yes, except mine is just an album, not a universe. But
Hey, you're young.
yeah, I'm young. I still have time. Um, I think it was demos. I started making song demos for a possible record, and then I
Mm.
realized that the demos were the record. So
Well,
the
this is also, there's advertising, like you bang them out, what songs to order. Um, and so I guess you just get better and better. So doing an album is no big deal, no?
I mean, it's just you start to feel when you've done multiple, as you know, doing many, that this is just the next one. This is the next in the series. Dr. Lightman,
Hello.
hello.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. So
So
this is
you're
this is
in London? Where? I-
I'm in Italy. Leo's in New York.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And where are we finding you?
I'm in the Boston area.
Great. It's really a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Jack, should I dive in? Is there anything you want me to say?
No, please. So I'll just get a little preamble. So we're going to write a song inspired by the conversations today. So if there's a particular thing you feel you'd like to be in the song or you'd like to talk about, then just talk about it today, and we'll go in that direction.
Okay. Well, this is an unusual conversation for me. I've done many podcasts, but not one where a song is being written.
Yeah. If you could speak in rhyme, that would really help our work as well.
Right. Well, if I could sing well, that would probably help even more.
Definitely.
Couldn't hurt. You know, I'm Leo, by the way. It's really
Leo.
exciting to meet you. It's interesting to hear you say that you've done many interviews, but none in which a song is being written, because I think one of the things that I was always so uh, inspired by in your work is the understanding that we can take the material for creative work from all kinds of sources. And particularly, I think about when I, as a young undergraduate, read Einstein's Dreams. It was a revelation to me because it made me feel something so it was so emotive, and yet I understood that it was influenced by, you know, what may have been in your mind informing Einstein as he developed his theory of relativity.
Well, I didn't expect that plan for that book to be a science book. I used Einstein as a literary device, but I certainly did not write it as a lecture on relativity or physics 101 course or anything like that.
I wonder if just your science background, your authenticity, you validated it because you come from the world of science, that people decided to see it through that lens.
Well, that could be. I think that my background as a scientist helped me conjure up the various ways that time might behave, but I don't know whether it had any impact on authenticating the book.
Hmm.
I just don't know the answer to that.
Can we go back a little bit earlier in your life before we get to the work? Because I'm so curious about this life that you've lived between science and the arts.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I understand about your biography, going all the way back to your childhood in Memphis, is that your father owned a movie theater and your mother was a dancer.
That's right.
What was
And
please,
go ahead. Sorry.
just curious what your relationship was with the movies, the arts in general as a kid?
Well, uh, neither one of my parents was an artist per se. My father was a pretty good cartoonist, but that was totally as a hobby. He drew cartoons on the wall of my pediatrician. But in terms of the movies, because my father owned some movie theaters, I saw a lot of movies, and I think I became very conscious of scene setting.
Mhm.
And later on, I think that I incorporated that sensibility of scene setting into my writing. My mother, uh, as you say, taught dancing. She was a good dancer. Um, I'm a terrible dancer, so I don't know whether I got anything positive from there, but I did enjoy watching her dance. So those were influences on me. When I was in high school, I was on the editor of the literary magazine, and I wrote poetry, but I also entered projects in the local science fairs. So I had that kind of split personality from a young age.
I think over time it has proven to be, your great strength. But there are so many forces in all of these disciplines that would encourage you to choose one or the other. Did you feel that stress, and how did you deal with it?
I definitely felt that pressure from family and friends and teachers. I think it's just easier in life to be more of the scientific
Hmm.
type, quantitative, deliberate, um, versus the artistic type where you embrace ambiguity. Um, but I had two groups of friends when I was growing up. I had the scientific types and I had the artistic types, and I easily went back between the two groups without thinking there was anything unusual about that. But looking back on it, I see that I had two distinct groups of friends. I think that most children have uh, an affinity and an interest in both the sciences and the arts, and I think that it's kind of drummed out of them.
Hmm.
It's they're they pick up either consciously or unconsciously a message that it's easier to make a life if you're one or the other.
Do you still see that you have different groups of friends or different affinities like that? Or do you see it as your life is more connected now?
Well, my life is certainly more connected, but I still have two different groups of friends.
You talk about embracing the unknown, that there's something much less clear about a life in the arts. You described, I think it was in Probable Impossibilities, this moment, and maybe you've described it in other places, this moment when you were a young boy and you experienced what we would call an out of body experience, this like a very powerful, unknowable event.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think it's possible that many people have had experiences like that, like the one I had, and maybe not have noted it as significant. But I was probably about 9 or 10 years old, and it was actually during the daytime, and there was a train uh, that that went by our house in Memphis, close enough so that you could hear the train going by. And sometimes sounds will trigger thoughts and memories and ideas, as same way smells do that Proust wrote about. I think sounds do the same thing. They're sort of primal. And somehow the sound of the train going by triggered something in me that launched this out of body experience where I saw myself not only out of my body, but sort of from a vantage that was in outer space.
Hmm.
And I felt that I could sort of see my life as a speck in the cosmos, a tiny both in time and in space, and sort of got this visceral sense of the vast expanse of time before I was born and in the vast expanse of time after I would be dead. And I felt very small, and I also felt like it really didn't matter to the cosmos what happened to me. And then I thought of all of these people, starting with my parents, who, of course, for a child, those are the most important people in your life, and my brothers, and then my teachers, and all the people that I knew. And I was thinking, all of these people get up in the morning and they brush their teeth and they go to dentist appointments, they go to school, and none of it matters. It's just an insignificant speck in the cosmos. Nobody's going to remember them after they're gone. Uh, in fact, the whole planet is just a speck, from a cosmic point of view. Why do we even bother to get up in the morning? So it was that line of thinking, and I was only about 10 years old. I was sort of philosophically inclined from a young age.
Clearly. Do you feel that everything that followed that experience in some ways was a response to it, or were you already tuned in? I mean, it seems like so much of your work has been dealing with those questions.
Well, I think a lot of my work has been dealing with our mortality, which of course is the fundamental issue in front of all of us. And there's an anthropologist, an American anthropologist named Ernest Becker, who wrote a Pulitzer Prize winning book in the 1970s called The Denial of Death. And he makes an argument in that book that everything that we do, that we human beings do, Homo sapiens do, all of our institutions, our politics, our science, our art, the national boundaries we draw, all of it, everything is a attempt to put off death. Somehow or another, it's an attempt to circumvent the inevitable end of all of us. So I've been fascinated by that idea. I've also been fascinated by the fact that we are just a collection of atoms and molecules that happens to come together in a special arrangement for a few years and then dissolves. We're just material. And somehow this indescribable, unique, fabulous experience of consciousness and everything that consciousness brings about is just a sensation brought about by the electrical and chemical exchanges between neurons in our brain. I mean, that just to me is an overwhelming idea. And then the fact that in a few short years, the special arrangement of our atoms and molecules that makes us, that makes consciousness, will dissolve. Our atoms will be scattered about in the soil and the oceans and the ground and the air. And they will have been our atoms, but our consciousness will not be there.
Mm.
So that's just a staggering thought to me.
Has your thinking on it evolved over time?
I think it's sharpened.
In what
Well, I've learned more about brain science, and I've talked to some leading neuroscientists, um, and I think I understand it better at a scientific level. I don't think I understand it anymore at a philosophical or aesthetic or theological level. So I'm just totally boggled by these ideas. Um, some of these ideas are are themes in an upcoming public television series that's coming up in early January, and that I'm involved with.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this. This is a show called Searching, right? Our Quest for Meaning in the Age of Science.
Yes,
Based on what I've seen, it looks like it took you all over the world to talk to all kinds of people about how they see this question.
yes, that's right. Um, I mean, it's a profound. Well, these are profound questions, and of course, there are no answers to profound questions. We just mull over them and ponder them and are provoked by them. And, some of that provocation brings out science, some of it brings out art, some of it brings out music, I'm sure. Um, so these are eternal questions. I think in the 21st century that we can put these questions into a modern scientific context, but we still don't have answers.
This is one of the lines of questioning that I wanted to talk to you about. Reading your work, thinking about the nature of the universe, we are almost infinitesimal. Our lives don't mean anything. You can't even see them. You can't measure it. And yet here we are. But also, thinking about the history of humanity. And then in the last couple of hundred years, scientific development started to accelerate. You were very fixated on the year 1905 for a long time. You loved that period at the beginning of the 20th century. It was something that was like bubbling with promise, and all of this was delivered in the 20th century. But now in your own lifetime, it seems like the way we have our understanding of the universe is speeding up at an accelerated pace, at an exponential pace. I saw you say, maybe even in the preview for the miniseries, every moment matters. But my question is, but does this one matter more? I mean, is it possible to identify this moment in human history as more important?
Well, when you say this moment, you mean plus or minus 50 years or 100 years.
Well, I don't know if you're talking about in the sense of all we have is this moment in the sort of philosophical sense of it, or if you're referring to, yes, this historical moment, we could define it a
Yeah,
matter of decades or centuries or
yeah.
days.
So that's two different perspectives, and so let's talk about each of them.
Great.
I used to think that only things that were permanent had meaning.
Mm.
We're talking about meaning here. And for some reason, I thought that something had to be permanent or very long lasting to have meaning. The Leonardo da Vinci's paintings on the Sistine Chapel, ceiling the Sistine Chapel, that will last a long time. Shakespeare's plays will last a long time. But even Leonardo da Vinci's paintings will eventually be gone. I mean, there may be some digitized version of them 500 years from now, but so and So I think that there's nothing that human beings do that's really permanent. Everything that we see in nature is impermanent. Um, uh, Even the stars eventually will burn out. So in the absence of anything at all that's permanent and long lasting, where do you look for meaning? And I think that the only place you can find meaning is in the moment
Mhm.
when you're doing something very special. I think many of us we're on automatic pilot half the time. We're just going about our business, checking off our to-do list, not really being mindful, to use a Buddhist term, of really just being in the moment and giving yourself fully to the moment. We're all in the United States. We're about to celebrate a holiday called Thanksgiving, which is the biggest family holiday in the year for Americans, and it's a day when families come together. Some of them travel long distances to have a meal together, and that's a precious moment. So I don't think that we appreciate
Mhm.
the moment enough. Um, Getting to the other perspective of whether this historical period is special in all of the centuries of recorded history and all the accomplishments of human beings. I think that the internet and the computer and the information explosion that we have will be considered to be a very special moment in the history of humankind. So I do think that we are in a special moment for that reason.
And framing it in those terms sounds like you could be optimistic about this moment.
When you say this moment, are you talking about the historical moment
Yes,
or
sorry. The historical moment.
um,
Framing it in terms of the information explosion
yeah.
is could be seen as very optimistic, as
Well,
very.
I'm optimistic and pessimistic.
Mhm.
I'm optimistic because the internet and the computer have allowed us to do vastly more things than we were able to do in the past. So, by any measure of what constitutes accomplishment, I think that we will accomplish exponentially more with this capability. What I'm pessimistic about is that it has speeded up the pace of life to an unhealthy degree. The pace of life, the speed of the pace of life has always been regulated by the speed of communication.
Mhm.
And in the 1830s, it was the telegraph, that was the new communication device, which could send a few bits per second. In 1985, the internet came, it could send 1,000 bits per second. And now we can send 1 billion bits per second of information. And if you just look around you, you can see that people are living faster than they were before because of our high-speed communication devices. People look at their smartphones every 5 minutes. We divide up our day into 15-minute units of efficiency. A study was done by the British Council a few years ago of the walking speed of people in major cities. And it was found that over the last 30 years or so, the walking speed in 20 major cities has increased. We're just living faster. And the downside of that is that we don't have living as fast as we do. We don't take the time to reflect on who we are and what our values are and where we're going. We're just rushing from one thing to the next. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule, but in general, this fabulous development of the computer and the internet has increased the pace of life at the cost of self-reflection, uh, meditation, and consideration of who we are and where we're going. So that's why I say I'm both optimistic and pessimistic.
You remain very prolific, and you seem to be only leaning further into the exploration of these big and quite patient questions. How do you navigate through this accelerated pace of life?
Well, my wife and I are extremely fortunate in that we have a summer house on a small island in the state of Maine, northeast part of the United States. And we spend our entire summers there. My wife is a painter, and I'm mainly a writer now. And there are no boats or ferry service or bridges to the island, and we really unplug there. And I try to take some time every day, even when I'm not on this island, to unplug, to take a walk without my smartphone, which I strongly recommend to everybody, just to take 20 minutes a day, unplug, and just let your mind go where it wants to go. So that's the way that I have, up until recently, I didn't use email.
Really?
Yeah. But I teach at MIT, and it began to be a problem for my students that I was not on email. So I eventually threw in the towel and joined email.
So I guess we shouldn't expect to find you on Instagram or
Twitter, no.
Twitter anytime soon.
I mean, I wasn't on Twitter even before Elon Musk bought it, and I certainly wouldn't get on it now.
It seems like you sat that one out long enough that it'll run its course.
Yeah, I think so.
And can we talk about music? I mean, I know that music also has been in your life, and that at
Yeah.
times you have really sort of held music up as a special case in the arts. What is your relationship with music like? And
Well, I took 10 years of piano lessons when I was a child, and I studied with a woman who was the grand student of Franz Liszt. So I can trace my musical heritage 3 generations back to Franz Liszt, who was a great pianist as well as composer. And the piano has stayed with me. I mean, 10 years is long enough for it to get into your blood. So I've had a piano wherever I've lived, and I play something almost every day. I also played the flute when I was in graduate school. When I was a graduate student getting a PhD in theoretical physics, and I took time out to learn the flute. So it's been music has been a part of my life. I wrote a novel called Mr. G, which is the story of creation is told by God, and God is he's omniscient, but he's not all powerful. I'm sorry, he's all powerful, but he makes mistakes at times. He has an uncle and an aunt who are constantly giving me advice about how to go about creation. People have told me that there's a lot of music, and at least in the first few chapters of that book. And I wasn't aware of it at the time when I was writing it, but apparently, at least some readers feel that it's there.
do you listen to music when you're working?
I often do, not always. I like to work in a quiet place. I know that writers have all different kinds of modus operandi, and some writers like to work in a noisy cafe. I don't know what composers of music, I don't know whether there's the same range of environments that they like, but I often listen to music. I like quiet music.
Mhm.
Uh,
Do you select music according to how you want to feel the energy of what you're
I,
dealing?
I sometimes do. There's a magnificent piece, and I can't remember the composer now, but you'll know it. It's some like ode to a princess dying young.
Mhm.
Do
I
you
don't
know that one?
but you could fill many books with what I don't know.
Yeah. Well, same here. So there are certain pieces of music that put me in the right frame of mind for a particular part of a book that I'm writing. It's amazing what emotional impact music has.
Yeah.
Well, of course, you
Well,
guys
that's
know more about that than I do, but
I don't know. I mean, you talk about the thing that triggered your out of body experience as being a sound, right? I mean, all the way
it was
back,
a sound. It was a sound. Yeah.
which is music ultimately. I mean,
Yeah. Hmm.
same kind of trigger.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that being sensitive to sounds had survival benefit. Back 2 million years ago when Homo sapiens was evolving, that you had to be sensitive to sounds for survival. If there's a rustling in the bushes, you had to know whether it was friend or foe. And I think that our appreciation to music as an art form is probably a byproduct of that sensitivity to sound, which had survival benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I often ask the question, why did we, in the midst of all of the struggle of surviving, why did we start making up melodies? I mean, why would we create music? Of all the things that we could have been doing, we started singing, and they found flutes in the caves. They found these
Yeah,
bird bone flutes. I mean, it goes all the way back. It's a really interesting impulse that came out of us.
it is. It is. Um, and there are probably anthropologists who know something about that. But yes, it is an interesting impulse and something that goes way back. Um, but I think, it might have been part of the same impulse that stirred Neanderthal man to do the paintings on the wall, you know, an expression of your being in this strange cosmos of a universe that we're in, this strange place. And how do we express ourselves? And I think that painting and music are, you know, long before science.
Mhm. Well, but again, I think that's why it's it's kind of striking that you, with all of the awareness of the universe and the realization of our space in it, at an early age, decided that you would devote part of your time to poetry, which is another impulse that's related to what you're saying. It's an assertion of self. An expression of being. Knowing what you knew about where we, or feeling what you felt about our place in the universe. Why write poetry?
Well, we were talking about music. Poetry is musical. Poetry is meant to be read aloud, and it has rhythms and cadences and sounds. And so, you see, I've got four grandchildren, and they they make up poems and sing things and rhyme just spontaneously. So, I think poetry, when I was young, writing poetry expressed both my philosophical bent and my love of sound.
Hmm. Has your thinking about the role of the arts, of creativity, changed as the world has become more complicated? I mean, is it more interesting for you to express yourself artistically or creatively today?
Yeah, I think so. I think I hope that I'm more mature than I was at 25 years old. Uh, and I'm able to see the world on a larger canvas because of that. I've had more life experience as we all do as we get older. And I see the arts and the sciences as different ways of expressing ourselves. Um,
Hmm.
uh, I'm trying to think what else I can say about that. Um, I think that I have, I mean, as we get older, we hopefully we think more about who we are.
Well, when you spoke about mortality, about how at the end of the day, maybe the fundamental issue that you've been grappling with is mortality. You seem like you're very healthy. You seem like you're strong. But as we get older, we approach our mortality more viscerally.
Yeah,
So not only are we living in a complicated world, a world of ever more complexity, moving at a faster pace, as you say, but you know, the question of mortality becomes more in focus.
it becomes more real. Yeah. Well, I was getting back to the previous question you asked me. Um, uh, as I've gotten older and I've understood more about myself, I think I realize that I am an artist at a very deep level, and I don't say that to compliment myself, but I like the solitude of creating something in the arts. I mean, I know there are there's some arts where you're always working with other people. If you're playing in a symphony orchestra, if you're in a dance troupe, but I think many of the arts that you are working uh, as a solitary creator, and that's something that I feel is a very deep part of me. I know if I go 2 or 3 days, even as little as 2 or 3 days without doing something creative, I feel empty. My skin starts to crawl, and I really think that it is that artistic exploration and expression are deep parts of me. I also know that I'm fundamentally a scientist.
Mm.
If I see a boat on the water, a motorboat, and there's a wake behind it that's at a certain angle, I immediately want to calculate why that angle is what it is. And so I have a deep part of me also that wants to understand quantitatively and rationally why the physical world is as it is.
Mm. And even maybe what makes it beautiful. I mean, I was reminded when I read that your mother taught dance, I was reminded of that early essay in Dance for Two, where you describe what's happening with a ballet dancer, what's happening, what forces are at work. And it was sort of like, in a way, helping to explain not only what's making this happen, but why we maybe think it's beautiful. Everything has to take place in order for us to perceive it as beautiful.
Yes. Well, understanding why things are beautiful in a scientific manner, for me, does not diminish my awe in the slightest bit. I'm still as awestruck by uh, the way that a setting sun melts and uh, the way that mist rises from the ground early in the morning, um, rainbows, the blue of the sky. I can explain all of those things in scientific terms, but it doesn't diminish the transcendent experience of witnessing them.
Songwriters often talk about how when they are really in a flow state, the act of creation is almost a sense that something is passing through you or moving through you, that you're just channeling something that's sort of inevitably that was always there.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you've had any experience as you pursue your own creative work.
Well, I love that description that you have, and I think that I've had that feeling also. At the same time, as a scientist, I think that ultimately it all is rooted in the neurons in
Hmm.
our brains and in the electrical and chemical messages between them. But I have certainly had that feeling like something is being channeled through me. Were either one of you sailors by any chance? No.
Jack, do you sail? No.
My girlfriend sails, but I don't.
Okay. Well, I'm going to describe an experience that happens when you're sailing a boat that is exactly the way that I feel when I get into this zone that you're describing. What slows boats down, a sailboat down, is the water, of course, the friction in the water. Well, if you have a boat with a round bottom, and some boats have round bottoms, and if you have a strong wind, every once in a while, the boat will get up on top of the water and plane over the water. It's called planing. It's skimming over the water, and the friction goes to zero. And so what it feels like if you're in the boat is it feels like this hand has grabbed hold of the mast of the boat and just yanked you forward. That's what it feels like. And when I'm doing something that's really creative, writing or even playing music on the piano, and I get into this zone, it feels like I'm planing.
Hmm.
It feels the same.
Removal of obstruction.
Removal of obstruction, removal of friction.
When it comes to music, sometimes I've asked this question, if we really are just unlocking or accessing things that exist, patterns that the brain perceives as beautiful. The Overtone series is one of them, where you start to see, well, we think that these connections, these patterns of notes and of chords and of sounds are beautiful, and it's not a mistake. I mean, it actually is something that's occurring naturally, and we're just kind of trying to borrow it in our own way.
Write it down. Yeah.
And as a writer too, I mean, you have form, you have shape, you have rhythm, you have a lot of naturally occurring phenomena that you're kind of borrowing just to put a great sentence together or a great paragraph together.
Right. But in addition to all of that, you have characters. And it's in the novels that I've written, it's frequently the case that in the first draft of the novel, I don't understand the characters very well.
Mm.
And some of the things they say don't ring true to me. And then there are moments where I suddenly get an insight into a character and I understand who she is. And it may be just with a single sentence that comes out. And suddenly I understand this character. Of course, a novelist shouldn't understand his characters totally, because once you understand a character totally, there are no longer any subterranean depths of complexity. Real people are very complicated, full of self contradictions, and so I want to understand the character, but I don't want to understand the character fully, because once I understand the character fully, there will no longer the reader will no longer feel that submerged depth of complexity. You know, when you think about it, we don't really know anybody perfectly. We don't even know our boyfriend or girlfriend perfectly.
I thought you were going to say we don't even know ourselves perfectly.
Well, I don't think we know ourselves perfectly either.
And we do things that don't always make sense even to us, right?
We do. And that's the wonderful thing about human beings. You know, that's why all of this is fun. If all of this were totally predictable, I think it would be much less fun. In the television series that's premiering in January, I talked to a neuroscientist, a leading neuroscientist, and I asked him the following question: If we could, do you think that we will ever understand the brain well enough so that we could upload the brains of two people into a computer and have it predict whether they will fall in love?
Mm.
And he said, well, right now we can say that there's a 40% chance you'll fall in love with Alice and a 70% chance you'll fall in love with Mary. As time goes on, those percentages will get higher and higher and approach 100%. And I told him, Bob, I really don't want a computer predicting who I'm going to fall in love with.
And I have often wondered, like, what would a computer make of arranged marriages? There are plenty of examples of people who fall in love over time. I mean, we're capable of falling in love with many people for multiple reasons. I don't know if a computer can really predict those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, I hope not.
That is so interesting to hear you say that as a novelist, you shouldn't fully know your characters. I mean, I guess I've heard people talk about how they get to know their characters. You're discovering your characters. They reveal themselves to you, which always seems so.
Yeah.
How could something that is
interesting, right? How could somebody reveal it if it's all coming out of your brain?
Creation of your own.
Right. Let's get back to this channeling
Yeah.
verb that you used. That even though it's coming out of your brain, it's coming out of a subconscious part of your brain. And the subconscious brain is vastly underrated.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's a huge amount of thinking and decisions and sensibility that our conscious brain is not aware of. So I think that this feeling of channeling is an example of that.
Yeah. You described early on your comfort with place setting as being related to the movies,
Right.
And I think part of your great success as a writer about science is that you're able to explain it in a way and set the place, set the pace, set the tone of the conversation in a way that's accessible. Do you see them as very different when you're writing about something that is naturally occurring, that you can't invent, you can only describe, that the poetry comes in the way it's described, as opposed to when you're creating something fully out of whole cloth?
Well, there are similarities. And I think, I think good science writing or good writing about any subject involves storytelling, because, that's gets back to our primitive selves. But I also think there's some differences in science writing or creative writing. Let me generalize science writing to expository writing, where you're nonfiction, you're making an argument and you amass facts to lead your reader from the beginning to the end of the argument. We all learn, or we should learn, my daughter's never learned this, that in good expository writing, you should start each paragraph with a topic sentence, which sort of tells the reader what the idea of the paragraph is. I don't know whether you guys had topic sentences where you grew up, but it's a common usage in expository writing. So you're supposed to start each sentence in expository writing with a sentence that sort of summarizes the paragraph and tells your reader where they're going. In fiction writing, a topic sentence is fatal. Because you want your reader to be blindsided. You want them to be carried off to that magical place you're trying to create. You want them to become part of the scene. And if you tell the reader at the beginning what the trip is about, it will cancel the trip. You want your reader to participate with you in the creative activity. And every reader will bring, a different set of life experiences. It's probably the same when you listen to music. You guys would know better than me, but everybody who listens to music is already bringing to the table all the music they've ever heard in their life, all the musical experiences they have. They're not listening on with a blank slate. They're
Yeah. Although what's interesting is, I mean, I live primarily in the world of song and the popular song, I guess.
Mhm.
It's I have an 11-year-old daughter. Watching her wake up to music has been interesting, and I think kids can tell you. I mean, if I were running a record label and I had a new band and I wanted to know, is this song a hit? I would put a dozen 11-year-old girls in the room, and they'll tell you right away, is this a hit or not? They attach themselves to what's working about it, what's catchy about it,
That's
is it
right.
too
Yeah.
slow? They understand it intuitively, and then we spend the rest of our lives kind of complicating it with the questions of aesthetics and style, but they know right away, is this a hit? We
Well,
might not
that's
always
that's
want a hit,
interesting.
but
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Um, um, I don't know whether it's the same in music or in in fiction, uh, but I know that in fiction that you want to leave room for your reader's own imagination, and so you don't start each paragraph with a topic sentence.
and maybe you don't even know what your topic sentence is. It sounds like there's a lot of discovery as you write.
Yeah, right, exactly. There's discovery, which is, partly related to not understanding your characters fully.
Do you write long outlines of your books or
No, I,
outlines of any kind?
I have very simple, sketchy outlines, but I always leave room for my characters to surprise me. I try not to overplot a book if it's a novel. I want to be surprised. I can put my character in a situation where they're going to have to confront something, but then I stand back and get out of the way and just listen to them talk or watch them do what they're going to do. And I like to be surprised.
You know, it sounds like playing God. It sounds like it's an opportunity when you get to be above the big guy in the sky looking down on these characters.
Well, isn't it the same when you write a tune? I mean, you're creating something that wasn't there before.
Yes, in that case, yes, but and it's true when you write a tune, you can create anybody you want and have them do anything. They can fall in love and out of love with each other. They can hurt each other. They can answer questions. They can do all kinds of things.
Well,
But
you can also put two notes together, that haven't been put together before,
that's
or a chord.
increasingly harder and harder to come by.
You know, um, when I was in lived in Los Angeles, I'm trying to think of there was an avant-garde musician. Um, I don't know why I can't remember his name now. I will think of it in a minute. Who was using a very unusual scale.
Hmm.
You know who that might have been?
No.
I'll
What kind?
think I'll
That's
think of it. Is there something called a pentatonic scale? Who would that have been?
well, pentatonic scale is at the heart of every
Everything.
everything. Yeah.
Oh, Chip Corea.
Oh, Chick Corea.
Have you come across Chip Corea?
Well,
Is it jazz?
Chick Corea. Yeah, in
Yeah,
jazz.
Chick Corea.
Oh yeah.
Chick
They
Corea.
just passed
So
away
he
last
was
year.
he was playing uh in the 1970s. He was just getting started.
Yeah.
And I was a graduate student in Los Angeles, and I went to a small club where he was playing, and I heard music. I heard scales and tones that I'd never heard before.
Oh, yes. I see what you're. Yes, Chick Corea definitely made music that had not been heard before. That's true. It is doable. I see. That's a response to me. It's harder and
Yeah.
harder to put two notes together that haven't been. Agreed. I agree. I think Chick Corea did
Yeah.
do that.
And I was just knocked over.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can hit two notes together that are very dissonant and don't sound nice, but put notes together that sound interesting and nice, and it still have never been played before. That's pretty spectacular.
Yes, absolutely. And then the other aspect of it, which is something that I sort of live by, which is that, the same two notes may have been put together 1,000 times, but the way I put them together,
The way you put them together.
way
Yes.
it feels when I put them together.
Yes.
That's what
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, that's new. Well, that's like,
new.
writers, there are only 100 plots in all of fiction
Right.
throughout the history, but different writers are able to make those plots come alive in a different way, in a different setting, different era, different characters.
We started out talking about Einstein's dreams because that was the gateway into my understanding of you. And I realized as we were getting ready to talk today that it was published 30 years ago. It came out in 1993. So round numbers sometimes are nice ways of marking time. I don't know. But, you have written so much, you've done so much work. That book is probably still what your most successful book. I don't know if that's fair to say.
It's my most successful book. Yes.
What do you think your career would have looked like without that book? Do you see a before and an after?
Great question. I don't know. It certainly would have slowed me down a lot, if not stopped me altogether, if I hadn't published that book. I mean, I think I still would have been a writer and tried to, explore the connection between the science and the arts. I don't know whether I would have been as successful if I hadn't had that book under my belt. So I consider that to be a stroke of good luck, wherever ideas come from. And I'm just grateful for the muses for handing me that book.
Do you remember, as you were formulating it, do you remember the process of putting it together?
I do. The title came to me first, which is an odd way to begin a project. But I was already interested in the tension between the sciences and the humanities, and Einstein sort of represents our rational side, and our dreams represent our more intuitive side. So the title came to me first, and then I thought that was a very interesting juxtaposition of two words.
Mm-hmm.
And then I immediately scribbled down about 10 ideas for dreams that Einstein might have had. Are you familiar with the writer Italo Calvino?
Yes.
So I had read some of the magic realist writers like Italo Calvino and Borges and Marquez, and very much appreciated their magic realism.
Yes.
So that was certainly something in my artistic library, you might say. So that's how it started.
Had you written any magical realism before that?
I had. I'd written a couple of short essays. I began writing essays about science in the early 1980s. And around the mid-'80s, I started stretching the form of the essay and trying some experimental things. And I wrote a few essays that were really more like short stories. So that was, I had done a little bit of that before Einstein's dreams.
Did you have a sense that there was something special about that project when you were writing it? Could you have predicted maybe this is going to resonate with people?
Well, I did not have any inkling of its success, but I know that when I was writing it, that it felt very different from anything else that I've written. I felt like I went into a dream state myself for about 3 months, and uh, I was just it was almost like a long hallucination or something. So that part of it felt unusual, the actual writing of the book, but I certainly had no idea that it would be a success.
Have you had that kind of experience subsequently in projects?
I've had uh, smaller versions of it.
Did you go to Switzerland?
Well, I've been to Switzerland since the book, but while I was writing the book, no, I did not go to Switzerland. I did not go to Bern. And the reason I didn't go to Bern, which is the city that's described most in the book, I didn't go there because I didn't want the real Bern to interfere with my imagined Bern. I thought it might stifle my imagination if I was just writing down what I actually saw. So the way that I proceeded in that book is I did not go to Bern or Switzerland while I was writing the book. I did do some research on the street names and things like that. But then when I was finished with the draft of the book, I sent it to some people who lived in Bern.
Hmm.
Said, please correct any, geographical mistakes I've made, like from this particular street, can you see the clock tower? That kind of thing.
Well, reading it feels like the way you describe writing it. It feels like you go into a dream. A dream. Did you add the first passage where you describe Einstein? There's only very few references to Einstein. I mean, was
Yeah.
that a at the after all of the dreams were written? Did you get a sense? Oh, I need to somehow place this in Einstein's life.
Well, in the first draft of the book, I did have the opening chapter uh, that sets the stage, but I did not have any of the interludes about the waking Einstein,
Yeah.
where he's talking to his friend Besso and so on. Those came in the second draft when I realized that to make this a novel or to give some narrative glue to it, so it's not just a bunch of 30 random little chapters, I needed to put in a little bit of narrative about the waking Einstein between dreams. And so I went back and put in the interludes into the book. So you're right. That's how it came about.
As a physicist, it seems like such a ballsy thing to do to, in any way purport to know what Einstein said or thought or did. The imaginary Einstein, I think as an artist is a very free thing to do, but considering your background as a physicist, it seems like such a radical thing to do, to imagine what Einstein might have.
Well, I considered it to be a literary work from the very beginning. I didn't try to make any of the dreams scientifically
Hmm.
realistic. It was always an artistic work from the very beginning. So that didn't bother me. Although it did bother some reviewers. The great physicist Stephen Hawking reviewed the book for a magazine called Nature, a science magazine, and he complained that the physics wasn't right in the book, and somehow missed the point that it was not a physics textbook.
Well, I was trying to remember where I read it, and I know we're going to wrap up now. I think I read it in an undergraduate survey course called Physics for Poets, which is a class that gets taught in a lot of universities. But I went to the University of Wisconsin, and my professor was this guy, Bob March, who wrote a version of the text called Physics for Poets.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought the book home to my apartment and started reading it. And the way I remember it is I said to my roommate, "This is a really interesting book. This is really cool." And my friend said to me, "That guy is very close friends with my father." My roommate was Alex Canizares, and his father was
Oh,
Claude
yeah. Yeah,
Canizares.
Claude Canizares, yes.
And so from the moment I discovered your book, I realized that you were a real person, which sometimes is helpful in
Yeah,
understanding people's work. Oh, that's a person. That's a person who knows somebody I know, you know?
that's a great story. Yeah, um,
Well, I'm glad I get to tell it to you as we wrap up, because it really has been 25 plus years that I've wanted to talk to you about it. And I'm so grateful that we got some time with you today. And I have to get to work and figure out what the muses have to offer after this.
well, I appreciate your being interested in talking to me, and your podcast sounds very interesting, very unique. So I'm pleased and honored to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lightman.
Alan. Yeah.
Alan. Thank you, Alan. Jack.
All right. Well, that was brilliant. I feel like I'm watching a PBS episode or something like that. It was so listening to you guys speak so eloquently.
But we don't
So,
have the accent.
so
You've got,
are both of you songwriters?
Yeah.
Yep. You both are. Yep.
and
Well,
we've been brought together by this project. This is Jack's project, where he brings songwriters in to talk to generally
yeah.
non-musical people, not non-musical, but people from other disciplines, and then it opens up a song. So
Yeah. Well, I
really
can see the piano in the background, Jack. Yeah. Well, maybe our paths will cross in the flesh sometime, and we can play some music together or something. I
I
can
would
listen.
love.
I can listen to you guys play.
You got to bring your flute.
If you get to New York, Leo's playing all the time, so you should see him with
Oh,
his dad's band. It's
okay.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
Well, please, Leo, drop me a note the next time you're performing somewhere in New York, and if I can get there, I will.
I absolutely will. I would love it. I would love that. Alan, thank you so much. And
Okay, thank you, Leo. Thank you, Jack. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Jack, should I stay on?
Yeah, you should decompress, no?
I think so, right?
Whoa, what a great episode.
I mean, what a generosity. You know, didn't he seem to really get excited when we started to talk about the creative stuff?
He did. He kind of leaned forward in his chair, and when he started talking about the life of the characters, you really got him in then. Yeah.
And you know, that's why I said at the beginning, you just can't predict what's going to happen. I mean,
No.
I could have prepared 50 questions, and none of them would have asked how he approaches developing his characters as a
Yeah.
novelist.
But did you use some of the questions, or did you just make them up on the fly?
Let's see. I made him up on the fly. I mean, the question I asked, the one question I had was, what was your relationship with the arts like growing up? Because his dad owned theater. And then the other question, I wanted to talk about Einstein's dreams, what he remembered of writing. No, I mean, there wasn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounded so professional. There's always that awkward moment in the start of the interview. You're like, that heart in the mouth moment, like, how's he going to be today? Is this going to go well? And then as he got going, yeah, it really, really flowed, and he got more relaxed as well. And it really kind of developed wonderfully.
Yeah. Yeah. It was cool. It was cool. I'm so glad to talk to him. And I had that in my pocket the whole time, that my college roommate was the son of his friend from MIT. And you know, sometimes if I have some connection to somebody, I want them to know right away. Other times I never even tell them. It seemed like a nice way to wrap it up at the end.
Yeah, it's beautiful. 10 out of 10.
Oh, thank you for making it.
So who do you want to do next?
Oh man. First, I have to write this song. I mean, talk about trying to figure out how to write a song out of that. There's an album's worth of material in there.
I know, I was going to say, because I was thinking he said the meaning in the moment. That could be quite a nice song title.
Yes.
And then you could tie in about, watching the setting sun or the mist rising, and, you could get in there about complicated characters and how we do. He talked a lot about how we need to be reflect on our values and take the time. And he must see his, this acceleration with his students using the devices probably during class, and the attention span going down, and his work, as a writer and as a teacher, it's all about good attention span. It's about good concentration, and yeah, to see that kind of dissolving, and as we all accelerate towards infinity, as he put it. Then
You know, it's accelerate towards infinity. Did he say that?
no, but he said something similar like that.
Brilliant thing to say. But I think like what's funny about these kinds of conversations is that so much of what's revealed is like in the humanness of it, like that he refused email for so long.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I
Like
knew it wasn't on Twitter or Instagram or any of the socials because they researched him, but I didn't know he didn't. Because luckily he does email, because that's how I got him.
I mean, otherwise you would have been leaving messages on some sort of like an old answering machine in my teacher's lounge,
Yeah, sending pigeons to an island. I don't know what.
island off the coast of Maine. Exactly.
Yeah, but he had a lovely smile as well. He's a serious guy, but he's a deep, deep, still waters run deep. No,
I mean, I get it. He, and I have to say, because I do this also, including reaching out to people.
yeah,
I suggested that you get in touch with him because
it's hard work.
it is hard work, but then what I realized when we started is, okay, so there's a lot. This is a little bit of the confusing thing about your project is, okay, well, who's Jack, and then who's the other? Where are they? And whose podcast is it? And what is it going to be? I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of questions that are
there
just
is. And also the musicians, when I ask them, they don't. So I'm writing a song with the guest, and then I don't understand that. Nobody understands the idea of
yeah,
this podcast.
yeah.
Um, which is, yes, I guess you're onto a new thing. It's difficult to explain to people, but I
No,
look upon that as a good thing.
it just has to. It just reveals itself. I mean, I think it's revealing itself.
So what are you going to say to people when you go out tonight? Or today I spoke to Alan Lightman.
Mm,
I'm going to write a song about him. I mean, this
yeah,
sounds simple. Yeah.
yeah. I spoke to Alan
Yeah.
Lightman. I mean, the other thing is that like interviews are a wonderful source of inspiration. The tricky thing about inspiration is
Mm,
it. I interviewed this other novelist years ago, this guy, Peter Straub, who was a wonderful writer and was a friend also. And he had this line where he said, inspiration is real, but earned, which means you will get struck by inspiration, but you have to be ready for it. You have to be in
right.
mode of creating, but you can't predict when it's going to come and what's going to happen. But I mean, over the years, a lot of songs have been written as a result of conversations I've had. I've never had a conversation with the express intent of then sitting down and writing a song
Mm.
about it. And I'm worried that I'm going to get in my own way.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's like you said about this, or he said about the musician. You're every song you've ever listened to. When you meet someone, you're at their every experience that they've ever had.
that's a great idea for a song.
This could be an album.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. Or an EP.
Start with
Yeah.
an EP and then turn it into a rock opera.
Yeah. But I also saw all these parallels between you and him as well, because his book, like you said, that was a turning point in his life. And I think, your song, when you won the Oscar, that kind of took you up to a new level. And so,
I'm really interested in, I didn't say this phrase to him, but I'm really interested in the way people recover from their own success.
what a great line. Recovering from success.
Because we always talk about recovering from failure, which is real, so real, and there's so many, so many favorite stories and interviews and, talk about when people lose it all, what do they do after that? Or even, your story, which I only briefly know about selling everything and giving it up and going and walkabout until you found what you needed. But what do you do when the thing that you want to do is successful?
Yeah.
How do you follow that up?
Right.
What's the
Yeah.
rest of your life like after you have your hit?
Yeah. 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 That second act, or it's amazing too. That's a great. Wow, so many ideas in this song, in this episode.
Yeah. So many songs in this episode.
Yeah.
So many
Yeah.
ideas in this song. So what do we do now? Now we're supposed to go off into our corners and ideate, right? Make up some just initial sketches.
Yeah. We sit in front of an 11-year-old girl, and we just give her the, see, she says yes or no.
She mostly
go
says
with
no
that.
to me. She's a tough tough.
Do you seriously do that? Do you play her all your music?
I mean, I do, but not, if she doesn't like it, I don't really change it. But she's very, very tuned into what's, I guess I would say what's commercial. I would.
So she's tougher than any ad agency creative committee.
Yeah, she is, and also she doesn't. I mean, ad agency people are already pretty unkind, but she's even faster.
Oh God, don't play the song then. I can't take that kind of criticism.
No, it's tough. I know, but she's coming around.
I think we should just go for very quiet music so he can maybe listen to it while he's writing, and then we can say we inspired his next book. Yeah.
Do you listen back to the conversations before you write, or you just based on your sense?
No, I make lots of notes.
Yeah, I saw.
So I know.
I
I write down the 3 4 word phrases that sound nice, and then rip them off for the song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so I'll come up with something. I'll send you an idea of what some idea, some 3 chords and a couple of rhymes, and then you develop that into a Leo masterpiece.
I'll do what I can. Hey, did you see he told us to call him Alan? That was nice.
That was a touching moment. Yeah.
It was lovely.
Yeah.
Jack, I'm curious to see where this goes.
Me too.
Thanks, man.
All right, a real pleasure. And I'm serious. Think about the next guest. We should make this a big annual event, because you're really a find to have such an eloquent musician.
Do you know what I think was great, Jack, was that you didn't know that I do this. That when you and I have to say I'm quite flattered, and I prefer it that way, knowing that you reached out to me as a songwriter, and not knowing this is a huge part of my life. Is this too? Well,
I've got a lot of episodes of the third story to get through, so I should probably go. And
you better get going. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Jack. Be well.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Every single thing is impermanent. Every last star in the firmament. Everyone you love or you ever met. Every single thought running through your head. Every setting sun, every morning mist. All the works of art and the sciences. Every out-of-body experience. Every single thing is impermanent. So try not to let it throw you. You know you can find meaning in the moment. Meaning in the moment. Meaning in the moment. Every sweet song that you ever heard. Each turn of phrase, every perfect word. Every back corner of consciousness. Every single thing is impermanent. So try not to let it throw you. You know you can find meaning in the moment. Meaning in the moment. Meaning in the moment. Meaning in the moment.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the song and the episode. The song will be released next week. Won't be available on all streaming platforms, but you can already pre-save. Please support the artists by following them on social media and adding the song to any playlists you have. This is a completely free show, and you've listened this far, so I'd really appreciate it if you could pay us back by clicking like and subscribe. And follow at Podsongs on social media platforms, or subscribe to the newsletter at podsongs.com for special updates. Or just tell the next person you see about this amazing show where musicians interview their idols and write a song about them. The songs are available for download from the Podsongs website as well, which pays a lot more than the 0.00 whatever we get from Spotify. You can also email me at jack@podsongs.com to give feedback, suggest an artist and guest combos you'd like to hear, or just say hello. We're a listener-supported show, and I'd love to hear from you. A final thanks to my researchers, Dori Verbo and Rosa Marino, my producer, Maurizio Sanicola of Goldmine Records, and musicians Massimino Vozza and Luigi Falcione. The next episode will be out soon. In the meantime, you can listen to more amazing episodes in the archives. Until then, have a great day.